The transport ship docked at Station Helix 9 with a soft hiss of pressure equalizing, pressed her face against the small window, watching the massive station grow larger until it filled her entire view. She had seen pictures before, but nothing prepared her for the real thing. The station was a city floating in space, wrapped around itself like a giant metal flower. Thousands of lights blinked from its surface. Ships moved around it like insects around a hive. She grabbed her bag and walked toward the exit. Her legs felt weak, not from the journey but from nervousness. The message had come 3 weeks ago. The High Matriarch had requested a human caretaker for her children, not just any human. The request had specifically named, though she had no idea why. The airlock opened and stepped onto the station. The air smelled clean but artificial, recycled 1,000 times. Around her, beings of every shape and size moved through the wide corridors. Some had 4 legs, some had none. Some floated, some crawled, had trained for this, had studied the different species for years, but seeing them all together still made her heart beat faster. A tall figure approached her. He wore the uniform of station security, and his face carried the expression of someone who had eaten something sour. His name tag read Commander. "You are the human caretaker," he said. It was not a question. "Yes, I am. I was told someone would meet me and take me to the suite." Looked at her bag. It was small and worn. "That is all you brought." "I do not need much." He made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been disgust. "Follow me, and try not to cause problems. Humans have a reputation for causing problems." Followed him through the corridors. She wanted to ask what he meant, but his stiff back did not invite conversation. They passed through security checkpoints, each one more serious than the last. Finally, they reached a section of the station that felt different. The walls were darker. The air was warmer. Everything smelled like forests and earth and something wild. The diplomatic suite said, "The Cubs are inside. Their parents left for the summit this morning. They will be gone for 1 month." He paused and looked at her with something like pity. "2 handlers tried before you. Both were injured within the first week. The Cubs are difficult." "I understand." "Do you?" He shook his head. "They are apex predators, the most feared species in 12 star systems. Their cubs are not pets. They are not children as humans understand children. They are young predators learning to hunt. If they decide you are prey, you will not survive." Nodded slowly. "Thank you for the warning." Opened the door and stepped aside. "Good luck, human. You will need it." The door closed behind her with a heavy sound, stood in darkness for a moment. Then her eyes adjusted and she saw the room. It was huge, designed to look like a forest clearing. Artificial trees rose toward a ceiling painted like a night sky. Soft moss covered the ground. In the center, 3 shapes watched her. The cubs were already larger than any Earth predator. They stood on 4 legs but knew they could rise to 2 when they wanted. Their fur was dark, almost black, and their eyes glowed with a faint yellow light. The eldest was the size of a small horse. The youngest was still bigger than a large dog. Nobody spoke, nobody moved. Slowly set down her bag. Then very carefully she sat on the ground. She made herself small. She lowered her eyes. She had read about body language. Direct starring was a challenge. Making yourself big was a threat. She did neither. "Hello," she said softly. "My name is. I am here to take care of you while your parents are away." The eldest cub moved first. He walked toward her in slow circles, getting closer with each round. His nose twitched. He was smelling her, learning her. "You are afraid," he said. His voice was deeper than she expected. "Your heart beats fast, your sweat smells of fear." "Yes," admitted. "I am afraid. You are very big and I am very small." The cub stopped circling. He seemed surprised by her honesty. The others pretended they were not afraid. They lied with their mouths while their bodies told the truth. You do not lie. Lying seems pointless when you can smell the truth. A sound came from the youngest cub. It took a moment to realize it was laughter. The small one bounded forward, stopping just in front of his face. Her eyes were bright with curiosity. "I am," she said. "That is, he thinks he is very smart because he is oldest. And that one hiding behind the tree he is the biggest, but he is shy." Smiled, "It is nice to meet all of you." The days passed slowly at first. Learned the cub's routines. She learned that liked to study and ask questions about everything. She learned that was indeed shy, but also fiercely protective of his siblings. She learned that was wild and playful and always getting into trouble. On the fifth night, opened her bag and pulled out something she had brought from Earth. It was a blanket, not a special blanket by Earth standards, just soft fabric, weighted slightly with a pattern of stars on one side. It smelled like home, like her mother's house where she had grown up. The cubs watched her with confusion as she spread the blanket on the moss. "What is that?" asked. "A blanket. Humans use them for comfort, for warmth, for feeling safe." Sat on the blanket and patted the space beside her. "Would you like to join me? I thought I could tell you a story. Human cubs like stories before sleep." Was the first to approach. She sniffed the blanket carefully, then touched it with her paw. Her eyes widened. "It is soft," she whispered, "so soft." She lay down on the blanket, pressing her face into the fabric. A sound came from her throat, not a growl, something closer to a purr, came next, settling beside his sister. Even trying to look dignified, eventually joined them. Pulled the blanket over all of them. It was just barely big enough. Then she began to tell a story about a brave knight who protected a kingdom not with a sword but with kindness. The cubs listened in silence. When the story ended, all three were asleep, piled around like puppies. She looked at them in the dim light. These were supposed to be dangerous predators, the children of the most feared species in the galaxy. But right now, wrapped in a blanket from Earth, they were just young ones who needed comfort. Did this every night after that. The blanket became a ritual, a signal that the day was ending and it was time to rest. Became so attached that she started carrying a corner of the blanket with her during the day. Slept more peacefully than he ever had. Even admitted that the stories were acceptable entertainment. Word spread through the station. The human had done something impossible. The cubs were calm. They were cooperative. They had not injured anyone. Some said she had magic. Others said she had drugs. Nobody could believe that the answer was simply a blanket and kindness. Commander heard the rumors and frowned. A human having such influence over the airs was dangerous. It was political. It was something that needed to be controlled. He opened his computer and began typing an order. The blanket would be classified as an unregistered comfort device. It would be confiscated for quarantine review. Standard procedure. Nothing personal. The order was approved and scheduled for the following week. Wrapped in the blanket with 3 sleeping cubs around her, had no idea what was coming. 12 days had passed since arrived at Station Helix 9. The routine was now comfortable and familiar. Mornings were for lessons, where taught the cubs about Earth and they taught her about there. Afternoons were for play and exploration within the suite, and evenings always were for blanket time. The cubs had changed in ways that surprised everyone, including herself, who once greeted every new person with suspicion and barely hidden threats, now asked thoughtful questions about human philosophy. The shy one had started painting with supplies ordered from the station market. His artwork showed forests and mountains from his, but also stars and rockets and small human figures. Had stopped biting things that annoyed her, mostly. Other species on the station noticed. An ambassador stopped in the corridor one day and asked, with genuine confusion in his 6 eyes, how she had tamed the wild ones. Did not like that word. Tamed. The cubs were not tamed. They were simply loved. "I just spend time with them," she told the ambassador. "I listen, I care." They made a clicking sound that might have been laughter. Humans are strange creatures. You are soft and weak and short-lived. Yet you walk into danger with blankets instead of weapons. It is either very brave or very stupid. Maybe both, said with a smile. That evening, she received a message on her personal device. It was from a human engineer who worked in the station's power systems. They had become friends over the past week, meeting for meals when could leave the suite. The message was short. Come to the engineering bay, now, important. Looked at the cubs. They were playing a hunting game, chasing each other through the artificial trees. She told she would return soon and hurried through the corridors. Was waiting by the door. Her face was serious. She pulled inside and closed the door. I intercepted a security memo, said. I should not have access to it, but station security has terrible encryption. Commander has ordered your blanket confiscated. Felt cold, what, why? Official reason is biosecurity protocols. They claim the blanket might carry harmful bacteria or parasites from Earth. Shook her head. But that is nonsense. Everything you brought was scanned and cleared when you arrived. The real reason is, he does not like that a human has so much influence over the airs. He thinks it is dangerous. Dangerous? I'm helping them. They are happy. They are healthy. I know, but sees politics, not children. They are powerful. If their cubs become attached to a human, that gives humanity influence over one of the strongest empires in the galaxy. Wants to control that, or stop it. His mind raced. When is the confiscation scheduled? Tomorrow evening, during your usual blanket time. They will send an officer and 2 security drones. Spent that night unable to sleep. She tried to file an appeal through official channels, but the bureaucracy was slow. Her request would not be reviewed for at least a week. The confiscation would happen long before then. She considered hiding the blanket, but where? The suite was monitored. Security could search anywhere they wanted. She considered fighting, but she was one small human against station security. She would lose and probably make things worse. In the end, she decided to do nothing. Maybe she could explain. Maybe the officer would understand. Maybe everything would be fine. The next evening came too quickly. The cubs finished their dinner and gathered in the usual spot, waiting for to bring the blanket. His tail wagged with excitement, even looked eager though he tried to hide it. Spread the blanket and began a story about a clever rabbit who outsmarted a fox. The cubs curled around her, warm and trusting, pressed against the side, her paw resting on the blanket's edge as always. The door opened. A young security officer stood in the entrance. His name tag read officer, and his face was pale with nervousness. Behind him floated 2 small security drones, their red lights blinking. I am sorry to interrupt, said. His voice shook slightly. I have orders from Commander. The fabric item designated as a blanket must be surrendered for quarantine review. His head rose slowly, his yellow eyes fixed on the officer. What did you say? Asked. His voice was quiet, too quiet. Swallowed hard. The blanket, I need to take it. It is standard procedure, biosecurity protocols. You want to take something that belongs to our den mother. Looked at with desperate eyes, silently begging her to help, but was frozen. She could feel the cub's muscles tensing around her. The air in the room had changed. It felt electric, dangerous. Please, said. I am just following orders. If you could just hand it over, I will leave immediately. No one needs to get hurt. He stepped forward and reached for the blanket. His fingers brushed against the corner that was holding. Woke with a cry. It was not a loud sound, but it carried a frequency of pure distress that seemed to vibrate in its bones. The little cub's eyes were wide with confusion and fear. Someone was trying to take her treasure. Someone was trying to take her safety. What happened next took 3 seconds. And moved as one. They flowed from lying down to standing in a single motion, faster than could track. Their bodies positioned themselves between and. Their fur rose along their spines. Their lips pulled back to reveal teeth that could bite through steel. A growl filled the room. It was not a sound meant for human ears. It was deep and ancient and terrible. The security drones sparked and shut down, their circuits overwhelmed by the frequency. Stumbled backward, his face with terror. The station's threat alarms began to wail. Spoke, and his voice was nothing like the curious young scholar had come to know. It was the voice of a predator who had decided something was a threat to his family. "You touch what is hers," said. "She is ours. Choose your next action wisely, small one." Could not move. His body had locked in place, some ancient prey instinct telling him that running would only trigger a chase. Tears rolled down his cheeks. Leaned forward, his massive head inches from his face. "You came into our den," said softly. "You tried to take from our guardian while we slept. On our world, this is called a death challenge. The traditional response is to remove the throat of the challenger." "Please," whispered. "Please, I was just following orders." "Orders," repeated. "Your commander ordered you to attack our pack, to threaten our den mother, to steal our comfort." His eyes narrowed. "Then your commander has declared war on the bloodline." Finally found her voice. "Stop." The cubs did not move. Their eyes stayed fixed on. "He is just a young soldier," said. She kept her voice calm and steady, though her heart was pounding. "He did not understand what he was doing. He is not your enemy. He is just someone following bad orders from a foolish commander." Slowly, carefully, she stood up. She walked between the cubs and placed herself in front of. "If you want to hurt him," she said, "you will have to go through me." The cubs stared at her. Something shifted in their eyes. The predator rage faded, replaced by confusion, then understanding, then something that looked almost like shame. Whimpered from the blanket, "Are you leaving us?" "No, little one." Turned and knelt beside, pulling the cub close. "I am not leaving. I am just teaching your brothers that strength is not only about fighting. Sometimes it is about choosing not to fight." The standoff lasted 47 more minutes. Security forces gathered outside the door but did not enter. Nobody wanted to be the one to face two angry cubs. Finally, calmed everyone enough to let leave. He walked out on shaking legs, his uniform wet with sweat. The alarm stopped. The station breathed again. But knew this was not over. What had happened in this room would spread through the station like fire. By morning, everyone would know. The cubs had nearly killed a security officer over a blanket. Over her blanket. She held the cubs close and wondered what would come next. News of the incident spread through Station Helix 9 faster than light through vacuum. By midnight, every species on the station knew what had happened. By morning, the story had reached 3 different star systems. The cubs had threatened to kill a security officer. They had declared war over a blanket. They had called a human their den mother. Commander stood in the command center, watching reports scroll across multiple screens. His face was hard as stone. Officers around him worked in nervous silence, afraid to speak, afraid to draw his attention. "This is a disaster," said to no one in particular. "A complete disaster." The door opened, and a woman walked in. She wore the formal dress of Earth's diplomatic corps, and her face carried the expression of someone who had been woken up for very bad news. Her name was Ambassador, and she was not happy. "Commander," she said, "please explain to me why I was pulled from my bed at 3 in the morning. Please explain why 17 ambassadors have sent me emergency messages. Please explain why the High Matriarch is currently trying to contact this station." Straightened his uniform. "There was a security incident. One of our officers attempted to confiscate an unregistered item from the suite. The cubs reacted with aggression." "An unregistered item." His voice was flat. "You mean a blanket, a human blanket brought by a human caretaker for human-style comfort rituals?" "It was a biosecurity concern. It was cleared by your own scanners when she arrived." His jaw tightened. The situation was more complex than that. The human was gaining too much influence over the heirs of the Empire. That influence needed to be managed. stared at him for a long moment. So you created an interstellar incident because you were uncomfortable with a young woman being good at her job. Before could respond, the main screen flickered. A holographic image began to form in the center of the room. Everyone stepped back instinctively. The image into the shape of a female, but larger and more imposing than any had described. Her fur was silver-white and her eyes burned like twin suns. High Matriarch had arrived. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Officers stopped breathing. Even took a small step backward, though he tried to hide it. "I have received disturbing reports," said. Her voice was calm, but it carried weight like a mountain. "I have been told that someone on this station attempted to harm my children." Found his voice. "High Matriarch, I assure you that no harm was intended. It was simply a routine security procedure. The officer was confiscating an item that had not been properly registered." His eyes fixed on him. He felt the gaze like a physical pressure. "My children entered a protective formation," said. "They positioned themselves to kill. They do not do this for routine procedures. They do this when they believe their pack is under attack." She paused. "Who gave the order?" Silence filled the room. "I asked a question," said. "I will not ask again." His mouth opened and closed. Sweat appeared on his forehead. The order came from Security Command. I authorized it, but it was standard procedure. The human's blanket was identified as a potential biosecurity risk." "A blanket?" His voice did not change, but somehow it became more terrifying. "You ordered an invasion of my children's den space. You ordered an attack on their chosen guardian. You ordered the theft of their comfort item over a blanket." "It was not an attack. The officer simply reached for the item. He entered their rest space during sleep cycle. He attempted to take from their den mother while they were vulnerable. In law, this is a declaration of intent to harm, a challenge to the pack." His lips pulled back slightly, showing teeth. "My cubs responded with restraint. If they had followed proper custom, your officer would be dead. His commander would be dead, and this station would be burning." Ambassador stepped forward. "High Matriarch, please. This was a terrible misunderstanding. Earth will take full responsibility for the actions of our personnel. Commander will face appropriate disciplinary measures." "Your apologies do not interest me," said. "What interests me is understanding how this happened. My children chose that human. They requested her specifically. They allowed her into their pack, which they have never done with any caretaker before. And someone on the station decided that bond was threatening." Her eyes swept the room. "Who decided this? Who looked at my children finding comfort and saw a problem?" Nobody spoke. "The delegation is considering withdrawal from the summit," continued. "If we leave, the treaty fails. If the treaty fails, the 17 human colony worlds in the border region lose their protection. Millions of your people will be exposed to species that do not share our restraint." She let that sink in. "I want to know if that is the future you prefer. I want to know if a blanket is worth the lives of millions." The door to the command center opened again. Everyone turned. Stood in the entrance. She was small and tired and wearing clothes wrinkled from a sleepless night. Behind her, barely visible in the corridor, 3 pairs of yellow eyes watched. Said, "You should not be here. This is a diplomatic meeting." "I know," walked forward. Her steps were steady despite the fear that must have been flooding her body. "But I need to speak." His hologram turned to face her. The matriarch studied the small human for a long moment. "You are the one they call Den Mother," said. I am the caretaker assigned to your children." "My children have never called anyone Den Mother before, not even their own aunts, not even the nurses who raised them from birth," tilted her head. "What did you do to earn that title?" Took a deep breath. "I brought a blanket. I told them stories. I held them when they were scared and praised them when they were brave. I did what any human mother would do. And now my children have nearly killed to protect you." "Yes," lowered her eyes, "and that is my fault." The room went silent. even seemed surprised. Continued. I knew the order was coming. A friend warned me. I tried to file an appeal, but I did not try hard enough. I did not fight hard enough. I could have hidden the blanket. I could have warned the cubs. I could have stopped this before it started. She paused. I failed to protect the peace of your children's den. The fault is mine. Slowly lowered herself to her knees. She bowed her head forward, exposing the back of her neck. It was the gesture of absolute submission and trust. It meant, I give you my life. I trust you not to take it. I asked to make it right, said. The cubs in the doorway made sounds of distress. They wanted to rush forward to protect their den mother, but something held them back. They understood that this moment was important. Stared at the small human kneeling before her hologram. This tiny, soft creature had just taken responsibility in the old way, the sacred way, the way used only within their own families. You accept blame that is not yours, said slowly. You shame yourself to protect others. This is not the behavior I expected from a human. Remain still. It is the behavior I learned from my mother. When those you love are in danger, you do what is necessary, even if it hurts. For a long moment nobody moved, nobody breathed. Then did something that made every expert on the station gasp. She bowed her head in return. Not much, just a small dip of acknowledgement, but from a high matriarch it meant everything. Rise, little one, said. You and I need to talk alone. She looked at and in all the others. Everyone else leave, now. The command center emptied quickly. Officers filed out with their heads down, relieved to escape the presence of the high matriarch. Commander hesitated at the door, his face twisted with frustration and wounded pride, but Ambassador pulled him away. The door closed with a soft sound. Stood alone in the room with hologram. The image flickered slightly, a reminder that the real matriarch was light years away, attending the summit that might now collapse because of a blanket. Sit said, you look tired. Found a chair and sat. Her legs were shaking. The adrenaline that had carried her through the confrontation was fatting, leaving exhaustion behind. Why did you do that? Asked. Why did you take the blame? The fault belongs to that commander, not to you. Because someone needed to, said. If I blamed, he would defend himself. He would argue. The situation would grow worse. But if I took responsibility, the conversation could move forward. We could find solutions instead of fighting about fault. Was quiet for a moment. This is a human strategy, to sacrifice your own honor to create peace. Sometimes, we call it falling on your sword. It is not pleasant, but it works. A strange species, murmured, so willing to hurt yourselves for others. The hologram moved closer. Even though it was just light and projection, felt the weight of the matriarch's attention like a physical thing. Tell me about the blanket, said. My advisors say it is just fabric, but my children treat it like sacred treasure. I want to understand. Gathered her thoughts. Human children need comfort objects. It is part of how we develop. When we are small, the world is big and scary, so we attach to things that feel safe. A blanket, a stuffed toy, a piece of cloth that smells like home. These objects help us feel protected when our parents cannot be there. And you gave such an object to my children. Yes, I thought, I know they are predators, I know they are strong and fierce, but they are also young and they are far from home. Their parents are gone for a month. That is a long time for children. Paused. I thought maybe they needed something soft, something that said, you are safe here, someone cares about you. Was silent for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was different, softer, almost sad. Cubs once had comfort tradition, she said, thousands of years ago. The old texts speak of bonding cloths and sleep songs and gentle touching during vulnerable times. But over generations, these practices were abandoned. They were seen as weakness, softness unbecoming of apex predators. Why? Because we were at war. For centuries, the fought for survival against enemies who showed no mercy. Softness became dangerous. Children who clung to comfort objects were seen as unprepared for reality. So we raised our young to be hard, to need nothing, to trust no one outside the immediate pack. Eyes dropped. We survived. We won our wars, but we lost something too. Understood now. The cubs were not just attached to the blanket, they were attached to what it meant, permission to be soft, permission to need comfort. Yes, looked at with new respect. You gave them something we forgot how to give. You showed them that being gentle is not the same as being weak. Outside the command center was having a different conversation. He had left his siblings with his friend and walked through the station corridors until he found the person he was looking for. Commander stood by a window, staring out at the stars. He looked older than he had that morning. The weight of what he had done was starting to settle on him. Approached silently. He was already taller than the human, even at his young age. His shadow fell across his face. Commander said. Turned. His hand moved toward his weapon, then stopped. What good would a weapon do against a? He straightened instead, trying to find his dignity. Young lord, he said formally, I did not expect to see you here. I wanted to speak with you, away from the others, away from the politics. Waited. Our den mother has been teaching us about humans, said. She tells us stories, old stories from Earth. Do you know them? Some said cautiously. There is a story about a knight. He protects a kingdom but not with his sword. He protects it with kindness, with wisdom, with understanding, tilted his head. There is another story about a mother. A monster comes for her child. The mother has no weapons, no claws, no fangs, but she fights anyway. She fights until she wins or dies. I know these stories. Then you know what humans are. Moved closer. His yellow eyes held gaze. We have studied your species through our den mother. We have learned your histories, your stories, your ways, and we have noticed something interesting. His throat tightened. What? Your stories never end with surrender. A human may lose, a human may die, but a human never gives up what they love without a fight. Not once in all your stories does a human say, take what is mine, I do not care. His voice was soft, almost gentle. This is what makes you dangerous, not your weapons or your numbers, your refusal to stop fighting for what matters to you. Said nothing. You tried to take something from our den mother, continued. A small thing, a blanket, but you did not understand what you were really doing. You were testing whether she would give up, whether she would surrender what was hers to keep the peace. I was following procedure. You were testing a human's love for her pack, almost smiled. She passed the test. We saw her stand between us and your officer. We saw her choose danger to protect everyone, including the officer himself. She did not fight with claws. She fought with words and positioning and courage. What is your point? Step back. My point is that we are learning from her. My siblings and I, we are learning what it means to be protective without being violent, what it means to be strong without being cruel, what it means to love something enough to make yourself vulnerable. He paused. You have no stories where humans surrender what they love, Commander. We are starting to understand why. Back in the command center, had made a decision. The summit will continue, she told. The delegation will not withdraw. Felt relief flood through her. Thank you, High Matriarch. Do not thank me yet. There will be conditions. Your commander will be removed from any position where he can interact with matters. Security protocols on this station will be revised with input from human cultural experts, and you will remain as caretaker for my children until the summit ends. Of course. There is one more thing. Hologram seemed to lean forward. The blanket will be formally registered as cultural equipment essential to human caregiving practices. No one will attempt to remove it again. Smiled despite her exhaustion. The cubs will be happy. I suspect they will. His voice warmed slightly. You have done something unexpected, little human. You have reminded thee of what we sacrificed to become apex predators. My children will return home different than they left. Softer, perhaps, but also, I think, stronger in ways that matter. I just wanted them to feel loved. And that, said, is exactly the problem. You humans love so easily, so completely, so dangerously. You love things that could kill you. You love beings who do not deserve it. You love without asking if your love will be returned. She shook her head slowly. It makes you vulnerable. It makes you foolish. And it makes you the most terrifying species in the galaxy. Did not know how to respond to that. Go back to my children, said. Tell them their mother is proud of their restraint. Tell them the treaty is safe. And tell them, she paused, tell them I look forward to hearing about these stories of yours. Perhaps I will learn something too. The hologram flickered and vanished. Sat alone in the empty command center for a long moment. Then she stood, walked to the door and went back to her cubs. 6 months had passed since the blanket incident at Station Helix 9. The galaxy had kept spinning. Treaties were signed. Wars were avoided. And something small but important had changed between humans and stood on the departure platform, watching ships arrive and leave. The artificial lights of the station tried to mimic sunlight but never quite succeeded. She had gotten used to the false light over these months. She had gotten used to many things. The summit had ended successfully. The treaty now included an additional clause that people called the Blanket Amendment, though that was not its official name. The clause stated that cultural comfort practices of all species were now protected under diplomatic immunity. No one could confiscate a meditation crystal from a. No one could ban the singing rituals of the. And no one, ever again, could try to take a blanket from a sleeping child. Had become something of a celebrity among humans. Her story had spread through the colony worlds. The woman who protected predator cubs with kindness. The woman who stood between species and chose peace. Humans across the galaxy were being recruited now as caretakers, counselors, and cultural liaisons. Not despite their softness as people once thought, because of it. The doors at the end of the platform opened. Turned to see High Matriarch walking toward her, flanked by guards. But the matriarch was not what caught attention. 3 smaller figures bounded ahead, ignoring all protocol, racing toward her like missiles made of fur and joy. Reached her first. The cub had grown in 6 months, now reaching his shoulder even on 4 legs. But she still acted like a puppy, pressing her head against his chest and making that strange purring sound. I thought we would never get here, said. The ship was so slow, I counted every minute. Arrived next, more controlled but no less eager. He brushed against the side, a gesture of affection that he had once been too shy to show. I finished the paintings, he said quietly. I want to show you before we leave. Came last, walking with the dignity expected of the eldest heir to the bloodline. But when he reached, that dignity cracked. He lowered his head until his forehead touched hers, a gesture reserved for family members. Den mother, he said simply. Wrapped her arms around all 3 of them as best she could. It was an impossible task. They were too big now, but she tried anyway. High Matriarch watched this display with an expression that might have been amusement on any other face. She waited until the greeting was finished before approaching. My children have talked about nothing but returning to you for months, said. I have heard stories about brave knights and clever rabbits until I could recite them myself. I hope that was not annoying. Annoying made a sound that might have been a laugh. It was educational. My council members now debate human philosophy during meetings. My generals discuss the strategic value of kindness. You have infected my entire court with human thinking. Was not sure if that was a compliment or a complaint. I am sorry. Do not be, it was necessary. They were becoming hard in ways that served no purpose. We had forgotten that strength without gentleness is just cruelty. Looked at her children, playing around like they were still tiny cubs. They have taught us to remember. The departure ceremony began. Customs required formal farewells when members of the pack separated, but it also allowed human customs to be included. So there were speeches and gifts and strange rituals that combined both cultures. Presented with a blade, it was small by standards, but it was made from the same metal as the weapons carried by the Imperial Guard. "You are now pact offended," said formally. "Any who harm you declare war on our house. Any who threaten you will face our claws. This blade marks you as protected by the bloodline of." Accepted the blade with trembling hands. "I am honored." Came next. He gave her a communication crystal carved with images of forests and stars. "So we can talk," he said shyly. "I want to tell you about my hunts and show you my new paintings and hear more stories." "I would like that very much." Finally approached. The youngest cub looked embarrassed, which was not an emotion often saw on faces. She held something small and soft in her paw. "I could not bring a proper gift," admitted. "I do not have blades or crystals, but I brought this." She opened her paw. Inside was a small piece of fabric. It took a moment to recognize it, a corner of the blanket. The corner had always held during story time. "I tore it," said quickly. "I know I should not have, but I wanted to keep part of it, and I tied it with my own fur because that is how show," she trailed off, too embarrassed to finish. Understood. Giving fur was the most intimate bond gift possible. It meant family. It meant forever. She knelt and pulled close. "Thank you," she whispered. "I will keep it always." The final goodbyes took longer than scheduled. Nobody wanted to rush them. Eventually, gently herded her children toward their ship. They kept looking back, waving, calling out promises to message every day. Watched until the ship was just another light among the stars. A voice spoke beside her. That was quite a scene. She turned to find Commander standing nearby. He looked different from the rigid officer who had tried to confiscate her blankets 6 months ago. Older, quieter. His uniform still bore the marks of his demotion. "Commander," she said carefully. "Just now, I am not in command of anything anymore." He stared at the space where the ship had been. "I came to apologize properly. I should have done it months ago." Waited. "I was afraid," admitted. Afraid of what it meant that a human could bond with heirs, afraid of the political implications, afraid of— He shook his head. "I do not know, something. I saw your influence as a threat instead of a gift. I was wrong." "Yes, you were." "The cubs spoke to me. That night after the incident, found me and talked about human stories, about knights and mothers and people who never surrender what they love." Finally met her eyes. "He was trying to teach me something. It took me months to understand what." "What did you learn?" Smiled sadly. "That the galaxy has plenty of predators. What it needs is more people willing to be soft." He paused. "You said that to someone, the cubs told me." "I might have." "It changed things. The way people think about humans, about what we offer," straightened slightly. "There are humans on now, caretakers, teachers, counselors, because of what you did here, because you showed them that softness is not weakness." Did not know what to say. She had just wanted to help some scared children feel safe. She had not planned to change the galaxy. Appeared at her elbow. Her friend had a new blanket in her arms, one she had made herself for. It had patterns of stars and forests and little wolf-like shapes that looked like playing cubs. "Ready to go home?" asked. Took the blanket and held it close. She thought about the cubs on their ship, flying toward a world that was learning to be gentle again. She thought about all the humans who would follow, carrying their strange gift of caring too much. "Yes," she said, "I think I am." Far away, in the council chamber of the— three young voices were making a report. They stood before elders who had lived for centuries, who had commanded fleets and conquered systems. But they listened to the cubs with genuine attention. "The humans are not prey," said. "They are not predators, they are something else, something we do not have a word for." "What would you call them?" an elder asked. Answered, "Guardians. They guard everything. Their families, their friends, complete strangers. Even enemies who do not deserve it, they cannot help it. It is what they are. And what do you recommend? Another elder asked. Looked at his siblings, they nodded. He turned back to the council. We recommend the Empire formally recognize humanity as pack, as family, as ours to protect as they have protected us. He paused. They showed us how to be soft without being weak. We should show them that they never forget those who teach them. The council voted. For the first time in 3,000 years, the decision was unanimous. Across the stars, wrapped herself in her new blanket and fell asleep, dreaming of cubs who purred and councils who voted, and a galaxy that was learning, slowly, to be kind. The end.